Only God. God moved upon Cyrus's heart to build the house of his enemy for God. What? God moved upon my second biggest enemy. Can you believe this? The person who provided this house for me at one point said I was mentally ill and wondered if I had a dark spirit ruling my life, and said that I was lazy, that I was disillusioned, and I was ignorant and a fool for trusting God. Can you believe that? That very person ended up being moved upon their heart to provide a house for me. It's my parents. I never asked my parents for this. And when they bought the house, it was a test of faith for them, because they were doing it with some other reasons in mind, also to help me, but also maybe to help some other people, right? And they knew that they had this desire. My stepfather had this desire to do this. And he knew that he was buying it for me. He would later tell that he knew he was buying it for me. But you know something? Their faith had to be tested too. Because God told me after they bought this house, don't move in that house. Can you imagine being my parents, putting their finances on the line to try to help me and to do this good thing for me, knowing that my mom says, you have to be out of this house by July 8th. And they had bought this house and offered me to move into it. But God told me not to move into this house. You might say, why in the world would God do this? That's where you lean on human understanding, and that's where God says to you, my ways are higher than your ways. I had to prove to God that I was not depending upon my parents. My parents know they are not my provider. Trust me when I tell you, they are not my provider. God has provided through them. But I have never asked them for the first dollar, and every single time they tried to give me something, God said no. And I had to decide, am I going to trust in my parents or am I going to trust in God? Every single time. So there's this whole story behind this. But they had to trust God too. They had to come over here and sit and house sit. When this house was sitting here while they were working on it and vacant, not understanding why I was sleeping in an office building in downtown Huntsville in a friend of mine's office on the floor, homeless. You know why? Because I was obeying God. He was testing me. He was making sure. I want to know, Michael, in all situations, will you obey me? Will you trust me? Are you willing to suffer for me? Are you willing to be uncomfortable for me? Because, Michael, I can't use you until I know you'll obey me. And you'll be willing to put every Isaac I give you back up on the altar. I can't use you and bless you until I know that I can trust you. But see, Michael, if you're going to obey your parents, if you're going to obey money, if you're going to obey what other people think about you, then I have no use for you. Do you know how many people are tested of God and they fail? I wonder if God has tried to test you and you failed. Do you know that you can have an opportunity to pass again? Do you know that God will test you and give you another chance and another chance? I wonder how many areas in finances or in relationally or in your goals or in your dreams or in your plans, God has tested you and you chose your will rather than His. You chose comfort rather than sacrifice. It's impossible to please God without faith. It's impossible to please God, Hebrews 12:2, until we live and present our bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. It's impossible to be a follower of Jesus Christ until we deny ourselves, take up our cross, and follow Him, Matthew 16:24. It's impossible to follow Jesus Christ until we have given up everything for Him, Luke 14:33. You can never outgive God. Temporarily, it will look like you outgave God. I'm telling you, hear me now and listen to me a week from now. When you follow Jesus Christ and you give Him everything, there's going to be a time when that sacrifice that you give God is going to look like you outgave Him. It's going to look like you've been defeated, like you made a mistake, like you've been had, like the wool's been pulled over your eyes, like you've been sent on a wild goose chase. But look at this now. This house I'm sitting in front of, provided for me. When I was homeless, I had no idea where I was going to end up. I had no idea how God would provide. And He just kept telling me, you trust me. You do what I'm telling you to do. Now listen, you know what He was having me do? God isolated me. For 4 months, I wrote that book. Every day. For 4 months. I wrote the John 7:17 challenge, the very book that I now get pictures from people and voicemails and emails from people from around the world who are starting to buy the book, and they're saying, Mike, this is changing my life. This is the best book I've ever heard written. I've never heard somebody teach the Word of God like you. You can't imagine. Now listen, all praise and glory to God, not to me. But this is the testimony. I'm just simply sharing with you what people are saying. God had a reason for me being in that dungeon. The Holy Spirit was speaking to me and showing me, if you'll obey me now, there's no way you can outgive me. It'll look like it. You got to be willing to lose your dignity. You got to be willing to be made fun of. You got to be willing to be misunderstood. Are you willing to go through these things? And God will bless you. God will take care of you. But you know, the first thing that God gave me is not this house and not my new wife, which is the most amazing gift He's ever given me. It's not my dignity back. It was His presence. It was the presence of God. That's the greatest gift that God can give you, is His presence and His guidance. I told God many times, Lord, I can go through anything. I'll walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I'll go through hell and back. But Lord, if you take away your presence from me and your guidance, Lord, I can't do it. I said, Lord, I'll live poor and impoverished for the rest of my life. I don't care what I have to do, but Lord, please don't take away the relationship. Please don't take away your guidance. That's what I can't live without. I can't live without your daily conscious presence as a reality in my life. So once God filled me with that spiritual prosperity, now God has been able to add some things to my life circumstantially that are real, true blessings. Amazing blessings. I keep getting sidetracked trying to explain this principle to you. Okay, listen. For you, O God, tested us. You refined us like silver. God used all these difficult circumstances in my life to burn off the parts of me that were in His way. The parts of me that I hated, the parts of me that were stubborn, the parts of me that were self-righteous, the parts of me that were trusting in me. You tested us. You refined us like silver. That can only happen through difficulty and affliction. You brought us into prison and you laid burdens on our backs. I was in a spiritual prison in my mom's house for 3.5 years with no money. I couldn't do anything she didn't say I couldn't do. One birthday, I wanted to take my daughter to Nashville. My mom thought it was too far to drive in her car. You know something? My mom had control over me as a then 38, 39-year-old man, however old I was. That was a burden on my back. It says, you let men ride over our heads. My mom was able to control everything I did, and I had to submit to it. Now, I could have chosen rebellion. There were so many times when I said, I can't take it anymore. It's so easy for me to make money. I had people that contacted me and wanted me to come speak. Shorelander Trailers Company called me and wanted to pay me $5,000 to come and speak. And another company wanted me to come speak. And there was so much temptation and this video job and all that. I could easily save myself and show my mom who's boss and tell her, you can't control me like this. You can't tell me that driving in your car to Nashville is too far and denying me the one thing I want to bless my daughter with is to take her and have a special daddy day. You can't deny me. My mom wasn't trying to be evil. I'm just helping you understand. My mom was right. It's her stuff and she gets to dictate what I can do. I'm telling you, the point was I had no freedom. I was in a spiritual prison. And so many times I wanted to quit. So many times I didn't want to yield and humble myself to her. I wanted to fight. And God would just challenge me, son, this is the difference between you entering the promised land and you staying stuck. Do you want what you can get in your life, or do you want what God can put in your life? The difference is, do you pass the test? Do you humble yourself? Do you stay low? Do you find rest in the shadow of the Almighty, or do you just try and go and grab what you can get in your life like Jacob? Do you just try to manipulate all the circumstances and only get for you what you can get for you? You let men ride over our heads. We went through fire and water, but you finally brought us to a place of abundance. I am telling you, my friend, I am in that place of abundance. Psalm 31:19, how great is your goodness, which you have stored up for those who fear you, which you bestow in the sight of men on those who take refuge in you. God is now bestowing upon me all these blessings, and He's doing it in sight of you. And people want to say, is God, they send emails and they say, is God really a personal God? Can God really help me? My friend, God will not do anything for me that He won't do for you. The devil will lie to you and tell you all kinds of reasons why he'll do something for me he won't for you. I'm white. I live in America. You're not. I know how to communicate fast with words. You can't. I was a salesman. I was this. I was thrown into the pit and God gave me extra grace and He doesn't give that to you. It's all a lie. Because the Bible says God is not a God of favoritism. I feel like His favorite. Honest to God, He knows I feel like I'm His favorite child in the whole world. Sometimes I feel like, Lord, I must be the only one. But I know I'm not. Christian history testifies that many men and women have felt like they were the only child, that they were His favorite. Many people have had this experience. If it was available to them, it's available to me. If it's available to me, it's available to you. God is not a God of favoritism. He's a God of intimates. He has those that He brings close because they fear Him. God is near to those who call on Him, to those who call on Him in truth. He knows the lowly close, but He knows the proud from afar. If you think you can do life on your own, God will let you. That's called pride, and you'll know God. He'll know you from a distance, which means He doesn't know you really at all. But if you humble yourself, just be willing to lose. Quit fighting to have your circumstances in your life work out. Surrender to finding the life to the full that can only come by the Spirit of Christ through fear of the Lord, obedience, intentional obedience to His words, trusting Him and having faith. Let God fill you in your heart with the feelings that you could never get, even if you were to attain the entire world through your own efforts. If you were to achieve and find and gain the entire world, you can never find the peace and the love and the joy and the rest and the contentment and the freedom from sin, the abundance of answered prayers. How many answered prayers do I have? I'm telling you, in 3,000 recordings in 6.5 years, I must have over 500 or 600 answers to prayer. Amazing answers to prayer. Look at what God has done for me. Will He not do this for you? I mean, look at what God has done for me and my wife. Wait until you hear the story of who this woman is and how God has given her to me, and what we had to go through in order to enter into this promised land experience. You as a human being, if you were the best storyteller in Hollywood, couldn't write a story this powerful, this compelling. You can't write stories like God's writing. You can't tell me that you can write a divorce story where a man has chased success his whole entire life. He gets to the top. He has all this money and the $1 million house and all these things. And all of a sudden he's having this crisis in his heart that life doesn't add up in his experience to what he thought it would. And in his heart, he still is missing something. Like when my own mom looks at me and she says to me years ago, Michael, I have money. I have this nice house. I have a great husband. I have my health. I have all these friends. I have all these things. And then my mom finally looks at me and she says, I don't have what you have. My mom is looking at a prisoner. I'm a prisoner in her own house. I didn't have my own car. I didn't have my own money. I didn't have my own freedom. I don't have my own this. I don't have my children. I didn't have a wife. I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't have a lot of anything. And she's looking at me and saying, you have something I don't have. She began to realize I was in possession of a peace and a joy that she didn't have, but she has all this stuff and her life works, but she's missing. Something's not right. There's no way to get this without fully trusting God and throwing yourself and turning your hands fully open and surrendering everything you have. Listen, don't be fooled. You're never, ever. Take it from me, and I say this boldly, and I'll stand before God, and I'm going to give an account of every word I spoke. And I'm telling you, may I be damned if what I'm saying to you is wrong. But I'm speaking to you what God's word says. You can have no part in the fullness of Christ until you fully surrender. And full surrender is not an external surrender in pretense. In Jeremiah, it says, these people cry out to me, but they cry out to me in pretense only. It means they're crying out to God for His help and for His stuff, but it's a hypocritical approach because they don't want to change their ways. They don't want to give Him the fullness of their heart. And He even says, I thought you would want to call me Father.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the shop. My name's Adam. We got a new project to work on here. What we have is some motorcycle pistons. Got a set of hyper coils. These are 83 millimeter pistons. that are going into a 2009 Suzuki Hayabusa, and this belongs to a friend of mine named Rodney, and he is building a drag bike out of this Hayabusa. That's something that Rodney does. He likes to drag race, and he's doing some modifications to this particular motor. I know he sent off and had the cylinder bored. Stock is 81 millimeter, and he's going 2 millimeter oversized, so he's going with 83 millimeter pistons. And he also had mentioned that the cylinder was sent off and had some kind of special coating done on the cylinder walls there. And at the time that he sent the cylinder out to get bored, he didn't have the set of pistons yet. He hadn't bought any pistons. So since then, he's purchased these pistons, and this is one right here, and this will be for number 1 cylinder. They have a coating on the top of it. It's like a ceramic coating that's more of a heat barrier. So what Rodney needs is these 4 pistons. We got, like I said, we got a set of 4 here. These pistons on the skirts, on the piston skirt on each side, you can see a little bit of rubbing action going on right there. I'm assuming that's from him trying to fit them down in the cylinder. He's measured all of the bores, cylinders 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I've got some dimensions right here that he wrote down. And these 4 pistons need to be machined, and I've got the spec right here, and it's going to be on the piston skirt. We got to relieve approximately, it's going to be, it looks like about 2 to 2.5 thousandths is what's going to be coming off the outer diameter here of the skirt. So we've got some pretty tight tolerances there that we need to try to hit. 1, 3, and 4 is going to be 3.2655, and then piston number 2 is going to be 3.2651, and what that's going to do is give him 2 thousandths clearance inside of the cylinder. The other thing that I forgot to mention there is he's running nitrous, and that's what the spec is for these pistons inside the cylinder, is 2 thousandths clearance for running nitrous. So we've got a pretty interesting project here, and the thing that's been kind of running through my mind is how I was going to hold these things in the lathe. You know, of course you can chuck it, but you really don't have a lot to indicate there, and you don't want to put marks on that part of the piston right there. So been kind of thinking about it, how I want to approach this job, and Rodney has been pushing me. I've had these for a few weeks. So I decided what I want to do is make a fixture for these to go in that they will slide in, and I'll be able to clamp the fixture around it, and that should hold it nice and true, and I'll be able to come in there and touch off and machine these to the right size. So I was digging around in my scrap pile right here. I found this piece of tubing. I don't remember what this was from and why I made this, but it was a piece of solid. It was bored and its face on each side, but it's the perfect piece to make a fixture to hold these pistons. And my plan is this will be chucked up in the 4-jaw. We're going to use the Monarch and use the new 4-jaw chuck. This will be chucked up, and we'll have it faced and machined and bored so that that piston will just slide in there and just far enough back. So, you know, about like so. This is also going to be split, and I'm going to drill it and tap it for a couple of draw bolts. So we'll have a couple cap head bolts on either side of the split line there so that it will draw it together. And we're going to split it first and get that taken care of, do the drilling and tapping, and then we'll set it up in the lathe and get it true and do the final bore for that piston to fit in. So pretty interesting project right there. We're about to get started on it. One other thing that we need to do, and I'll show you what we're gonna, I need to check my mic. We're gonna be using a 3 to 4 micrometer, and I wanna make sure that it's set to 0 like it should be. So we're gonna check that out. I got a set of gauge blocks there. We're gonna use the gauge blocks. So I'm gonna show you along the way. I don't know if this is gonna be 1 or 2 videos, but we'll see how it goes. All right, let's go ahead and get started. This is my go-to set of mics for a lot of my mic usage around the shop here. This is a 0 to 6 inch set. The first three for 1, 2, and 3 are Bryan & Sharp, and they are the slant line. And I love the thimble on these right there. I love the friction thimble. Some of my favorite mics to use. So the next three from 3 to 6 inch, they're Michitoya. And that's how I bought this box whenever I had acquired it a while back. So we're gonna pull the 3 to 4. This is the mic that we're gonna use. Okay, we're gonna see if we can do us a little bit of inspection, some calibration here. We're gonna go ahead and use this tool here. This is something that you use to hold all of your gauge blocks. This was something that was given to me by a viewer, Swedish made. Alright, so we got the 3 to 4 mic, and I'm gonna open up the gauge block set here. And I'm gonna use a 3-inch gauge block. Alright, so we're gonna use that one. And what I want to do is I want to stack up a few in here, and I'm trying to eliminate actually like holding this very much. I don't believe it's going to affect what I'm trying to do here, but let's go ahead and give it a shot. So I want to make sure this is a nice microfiber cloth. I want to make sure that the ends are clean. Okay, we'll fit that in there. This is a long one here. They make these in different sizes, so you can adjust this rod up and down quickly like that. So let's go ahead and we'll stack us up a couple more in there so that we can reach it. All right. Let me try something else here too. I got a couple of these really good 1, 2, 3 blocks. Trying to get where you guys can see it, what I'm doing here. All right, now I think we're getting somewhere. I can come in here and run the thimble with my fingers. All right, from here that looks like it's dead on. Let me read the tenths. Well, if it's anything, it might be a 1/10 off. It's sort of between the 0 and the 1 on the 10th reading, so I think we're there, right where it needs to be. Nope. Come on. Yeah, I think that's set to 0. We got a good mic. These Michitoyas I've always kept calibrated real close, but I haven't checked this one in a little time, so I think we've done good. So that gave me a chance to get my gauge blocks out and play with this tool here. Now I do have standards that come with this set too, and you can use your standards. This is my standard set here. But I don't really get to play with the gauge blocks much, and the gauge blocks are a much more precise way of checking your indicators and measuring tools and things like that. You can use this holder here to stack up gauge blocks and use it to be able to check your inside mics also. So for instance, you can kick them out like this. Once you stack up whatever height that you want so that your spacing is correct. See, that's a 2-inch block that I put in there, so this should be 2 inches from here to here if I'm stacking them correctly. And you can get in there and you can check your other tools that way. So anyway, all right, so we got a good mic. Let's go ahead and move on to the next step. So we're going to use the Kearney and Trecker mill, but we're going to use the horizontal arbor on it. So we're going to go ahead and remove the vertical head. This will be the first time I take it off after building the crane there, the parking attachment. So we already got this side loose. I'm going to go crack the other side, and we're going to swing this thing off out of the way. This clamp is slid back, so I can actually see at the top it started leaning forward just a little bit. So it's sitting on the overarms. I'm going to go over there to the crank handle and turn the crank handle and push those back, and it should drop off there. That's something that a lot of people was concerned about whenever you see me put this on last, is that they seen those overarms pushed back, when in fact they seated up inside these little counter bores all the way, and then they pushed back. So it has been sitting on the overarms. There it goes. It just dropped off. We'll find out how far to go in there, I think, but like maybe a 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch. There she is. All right. Three-quarters. That's how far they fit on to the, how far the overarms go up inside of this. There it goes. All right. It's all the way up against the machine. Okay. It's not quite touching the machine, it's just off of it. And then what I'll do is that set screw right here, I'll tighten that set screw up, and that'll keep this from trying to move either direction. So this is that arbor that a viewer of mine named Jim Leachy, he had given me a couple months back. It's a 1-inch arbor that I believe he had picked this up off eBay or something, and he sent it my way. And it looks like it running nice and straight. So I'm going to see if I can stack up enough spacers to be able to use this arbor here. That is a 24-inch arbor there. So Jim, looks like you did good there, man. All right, so here's the setup. I've got the piece clamped down using a couple of gooseneck clamps. I'm trying to keep a low profile. That's always a challenge, to be able to clear your clamps and your hardware whenever you're having to do some milling like this. So that's a 5-inch cutter right there, and I think it's going to give us just enough. What I want to do is touch off, and I'm hoping that I can go down 3/4 of an inch. I think I got just enough room to do that. So I want to find center. So what I'm doing, I'm coming over here to the edge. I'm gonna touch the edge of it on this side, and then I'll be able to move it over 2 inches. That's a 1/8 cutter, so we'll move it over 2 1/16 of an inch, and that'll put us in the center, because that's a 4-inch diameter piece of material right there. All right, there's our edge. I'm going to set the y-axis to 0. Make our step over. All right, 2 inches, 62. That should be the center. I zero the knee out here now, and I'm going to go up 3/4 of an inch. Okay, that's 3/4. I think we just real clear, hopefully. I need to get my coolant set up, and we'll go ahead and start the cut. So check out our new dual nozzle Noga Cool. This is the Mini Cool from Noga, and it's the dual nozzle model. This is one that Avi had sent me a few months ago. Finally setting it up, we're gonna give it a shot. I got it all set up, and so I've got the nozzle on each side of the cutter, and it's really putting some coolant there on it. These are really nice little setups that don't cost a lot of money, and they're excellent for machines that you don't have flood coolant set up on. Vibration there is not letting our magnet stay in place, and they're kind of pulling around. I don't like the rigidness of the 1-inch bar that's going on. I think I need to make a little bit adjustment on the bushing for the outboard support right here. Slowed it down a couple notches, and then I made a little adjustment on the bushing to help kind of tighten it up. I had to move my nozzles down because the vibration was making them spin on the overarm up top. All right, that's one side. Let me readjust my nozzles there. By the way, we're just going to clear that gooseneck clamp on the back side. All right, there she is, split up. Move the nozzles back here. Okay, so we're gonna go to the milling machine now. And the other thing I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna drill probably a 1/4 inch hole or something like that in the corners of where these slits are. And that'll help the two halves flex a little bit better. In addition, we'll go ahead and drill it and tap it for our 2 cap head bolts for each side. So our next setup over here in the do-all mill is I want to put some radiuses in the corners of these slots here. I don't think it's necessary for what I'm going to do. It's just an added feature that I want to put into it. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch end mill. This is a extended length end mill that'll reach all the way through there, and it has been used, but it should work fine for this. And I've got my Colin Chapette made multi-axis stop already set up. We already got it clamped in, so I'm going to show you how I'm going to line this up. I'm not going to use an edge finder or nothing to find the center. We're just going to eyeball it, but we'll start with a 1/8 wide parallel because I made a 1/8 slot, and we'll stick it in there. And then we're going to use this little machinist square, and we'll use this to square it up like so. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to bring it over here next to our stop. Alright, so I've got it square with the machinist square, and it's butted up against the rod on this stop here. I'm just going to hold a little bit of pressure while I clamp the vise. Alright, and should be close enough for our government work there. Got the end mill in the collet. So what I'm going to do, we're just going to line this up by sight, and this should put us within 10 thousandths, I would guess. Okay. I'm going to come over to slot, and I'm just going to turn it so that the two cutting flutes are sort of like parallel with the table here. And I'm just going to use my eyes to just kind of judge the center of it. And then I'm going to line up, say, maybe about half of it on the cutter there. And that's where we're going to cut it right there, hopefully. So, all right, we're ready to go. I want to hook up my little mister, and then we'll get started. Rotate it a little on me. Okay. All right, there's our two radius cuts we made. Hopefully this will allow it to spring a little bit. We're only going to need just a few thousandths. So now what I want to do is go ahead and we're going to set this thing up, and I want to drill it and tap it. It'll be drilled and counterbored on one side and then tapped on the other side for a cap head bolt on each side so we can draw it in there. So I'd like to set it up square and level with that slot. So what we'll do, we'll set a parallel there. We'll stick this parallel that we used earlier back in here. Alright, we're just going to set it just like that. So it's sitting square. Now I'm going to tighten the vise, and I'm going to give it some A-bomb torque. I don't want it to push down whenever I'm drilling it, so it's good and tight right there. I guess what I could do is just leave that parallel just in there like that whenever I'm doing my drilling and counterboring, just to make sure that it doesn't try to push it down either way. Okay, so let's get set up for that. Alright, I think I found the bolts that'll work. These are 1/4-20s, and I want some a little shorter than that, so I don't know if these bolts will work, but I'm gonna try them anyway. But if these are too long, then what I'll do is I'll just pick up some at we got a Fastenal down the road, and I'll just pick up a couple down there. But we're going to do 1/4-20s because we don't have a whole lot of room to work with here. So this is 4 inches in diameter. Our piston is basically 3 1/4. It's about 3 1/4. So what that's leaving us with after this is bored out is 3/4 of an inch. So you divide that in two, that's going to be 3/8 of an inch on each side, 0.375. That's how much wall thickness will be left there, is 3/8. So we want to take half of that and be in the center of that. So you divide that by 2, that's 3/16. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to touch off on the side of the part with an edge finder here, and we'll step it over 3/16. There's the 250 for the edge finder, and then we'll go 150, 60, 70, 85, 6, 7. Or you could just go 11/16. So that'll be the center line there of where we want it. So let's go ahead and pick up this front side, and then we'll step it back. And that, I haven't even thought about that yet. Probably a 1/4 inch. 2, 4. All right, we're going to create our flat spot and also be our counter bore for our cap head bolts. So I'm using a 3/8 end mill. And just come down to touch right there. And I'm just using the knee crank. What I'm going to do is just look for it to make a full radius on the flat there. Alright, I think that's going to be good right there. Using that 1/4 inch stub link drill, brand new, that the Stackhouse has given me. I'm going to come through the break and just spot the bottom side there. Alright, just came through. Alright, and I just spotted it with the drill. So we'll have to drill the bottom side, tap size for 1/4 Should be number 7 drill. Coming through that bottom, so I'm going to use the hand crank here. Oh. A little too far, hit the chuck. All right. We got our spring-loaded center in there. We got a 1/4 gun tap, which is a spiral pointed tap. So it should point the shoot the chips down. And I'm doing this by hand. I don't want to try to power tap it and risk running the chuck into it. I'll do it with this gun tap, and it may be enough, but I might run a bottom tap in there just to run the threads as deep as I can and see if we can utilize those bolts that I got. Might have to just cut some off. Can't go much further there. There you can see the chip coming out the bottom, the 2 flutes. That's why they call it the Spill Master. Alright, that's as far as I can get this tap, so I'll have to run a bottom tap in there and try to get the threads a little bit deeper. Where's it at? That's a brand new set that I had bought when Greenfield was still Greenfield, and I think this is the first time I've used them. Yeah, that's as far as I can get. The tap wrench is hitting right there. I have to look and see. I might have like a pulley tap, which is a long shank. I might be able to find one of those around here. All right, well, I can see right off that my bolts here are not going to work. They're just way too long. So I'll finish this out, and then tomorrow I'll pick up the right length bolts that I need. So we're going to do all this again that I just showed you. I'll give you some highlights, and we'll get this millwork finished out. Well, I don't know what I did wrong, but this side over here, I offset it wrong from the edge. I don't know why I did that. I had all the right measurements in my head, and I still offset it wrong. But this side I've got right over here. And I've got a couple of these stainless 1/4 cap head bolts there that, you know, would work fine. So I can use that on that side right there. But somehow this one, I moved it 5/16 to the center, and I don't know why I did that. I just don't. I had to go back and look at the footage and see what I did. This side we got right. We got a 3/16 from the edge. So this one's not going to work, because when I go to bore this for the piston, it's going to start hitting in. It's going to start cutting into where that tapped hole is right there. So another stupid screw up right there. I'm hoping that maybe this one bolt right here will work. I'm going to bore this thing to a very close tolerance on that piston so that it just fits in there with no play. So hopefully with this one bolt, it won't take much. It's tight there. Then once I give it just a little pull like that, should give it just enough to hold that piston, because we're just taking a few thousandths off of it. So, all right, so there it is. Let's go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and take it out. That's what it's supposed to look like. I should have verified my length in there where it was at, and I didn't do it. So we'll go ahead with it and see if it works.